So we begin the 10-part series on the German Empire, 1871 to 1918. However, like all things in history, it starts with Napoleon. And like a lot of other things in history, there's a lot of historical context beforehand that is best understood before there even was a German Empire state in 1871. So we begin our story in 1806. There is no Germany, there's not really much Central Europe, especially Napoleon going around. In 1806 there was the Holy Roman Empire. This institution that wasn't really holy or Roman or really an empire, but of the name was an entirely different historical debate, had existed for the best part of millennia in Central Europe and Northern Italy, what is today Northern Italy and parts of Switzerland. In 1806, on Napoleon's orders, and also the Emperor Francis's own well-being, the state was dissolved in 1806. In its wake was effectively a successor state, if you will. That was definitely not, however, the Holy Roman Empire, and as many historians will tell you, it's best to forget the Holy Roman Empire its entirety from 1806, otherwise you'll become extremely confused. So in 1806, with the Holy Roman Empire gone, a new collection of states, it's not one state, but a collection of states emerged out of the many old states of the Holy Roman Empire. This was the North German Confederation. And immediately, a question opened up as Napoleon was defeated in 1815 in the Battle of Waterloo, and the mid of the 19th century started doing many wars and fighting between the Russian, the Ottoman, and the French and the British empires. A question remained: Großdeutschland or Kleistdeutschland? A large Germany, one which takes over more of the southern German states, perhaps even parts of Austria and Schleswig, Holstein and Silesia, or to maintain the smaller German state of the North German Confederation and consolidate that power first. And this question lingered. However, it wasn't just Germany questioning these things in the mid-19th century. In 1861, nationalism was very much a dividing force in the Austrian and the Russian empires. However, in Italy, nationalism had created a new state, the Kingdom, later Empire of Italy. In 1868, we're over several 8,000 miles away in the Pacific, the Meiji Restoration in Japan had created another brand new state out of this unified nationalism and militarism. So by 1871, there was only one place left where there was this unifying nationalism force, and they gained inspiration, Italian and Japanese nationalists alike. However, like any state in history, one could not create it without its King of Prussia, Wilhelm I's leadership, having some wars of unification to strengthen itself. And Germany also realized at this point that the only way to achieve more economic political stability and empire would be through war, conquest, militarism, and to jingoise nationalism as a reason for war and to strengthen these unified states that, until 1806 under the Holy Roman Empire, had been backward, undeveloped, lacking any form of industry, as the British, the French, and even the Americans over the Atlantic were already exploiting natural resources. In 1864, they attacked the Danish in the Schleswig War. 13,000 Danish casualties, just around 4,000 of the German ones. In 1866, they followed this up immediately. Austrian, a perhaps ally that they wanted, however, they went to war with them as well, and they won, to secure Schleswig-Holstein for purely German territory. Although, with a weakened Austria and worries following the Crimean War, they quickly formed an alliance between the Prussians and the Austrians, and the later stages of World War I alliances were already born. However, there is now a North German state that is indeed unified, and the North German Federation effectively ceases to exist. But what about the southern German states? And what about Alsace-Lorraine? And importantly, the French? Ultimately, France was increasingly becoming alarmed of this new German militaristic state. After all, they had been defeated very decisively and brutally in both the 7 Years' War and the Napoleonic Wars. France had not actually really won a major war much in its recent history. But what would this new Germany mean for France? It would mean a competition. So, the Germans capitalised on this, and they realised that they would have to aggravate or go to war with France at some point. Luckily, from an international diplomacy point of view, not that there was much of that before the United Nations or even League of Nations, but nonetheless, from support, it was the French who landed the first blow, and effectively started the Prussians' work for them. When the 1870-1871 Franco-Prussian War began, many thought France would win. The world was wrong. In fact, they didn't just lost, they decisively lost. Germans entered Paris. Napoleon III was captured, and it was a decisive German victory in this war. And at that point, most of the work had now been done, and because the southern German states, for their own protection and to protect themselves from French or any other European aggression, they unified with Germany in the war. And Wilhelm I, at the Palace of Versailles, on the 18th of January 1871, proclaimed the creation of not just a collection of German states, but they are now unified under the Emperor and King of Prussia, Wilhelm I, and the German Empire as a state was born. Of course, although a state was being proclaimed, it is no means seen as legitimate or credible on the international stage, and there was much work still left to do. Although France had been initially pacified, although resentment there and vengeance would grow, the Russians, particularly to the east, and the British, the Dutch, the Spanish to the west, would also bring problems perceived for this new German Empire state. However, like the Japanese and Italians, it was a young nation. And what is a great way to increase legitimacy domestically and within that young nation to make people support the idea? It is nationalism, militarism, and of course for a state that is still not too heavily industrialised yet, and is simply trying to focus on existing, it must modernise and industrialise. And what's one way they can gain those resources and gain much international prestige? It is an empire on a global scale. That concludes the first part of the series. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications so you'll not miss out on episode 2, and thank you for watching.